The farm your late mother gave you was sold. We leave tomorrow. My wife's voice came through the phone like a sharp crack in the middle of a quiet room, shattering everything. I was sitting in the corner office of my law firm in Houston, papers spread across my mahogany desk, trying to finalize a deal that had been months in the making. I froze, my pen hovering over the contract. "What?" I whispered, barely able to believe the words. "My sister called me this morning," Sarah continued, her tone cold and clipped. "The farm, the one your mother left you, it's been sold. Someone else owns it now. We're leaving for Dallas tomorrow. Pack what you need." The line went dead before I could respond, leaving a hollow silence that filled the room. The farm, that place, was more than just land. It was my mother's legacy, the last tangible piece of the family she'd fought so hard to protect, and Sarah had just wiped it away like a bad debt. My name is Ethan Harper. I'm 42, a divorce lawyer with a reputation for fighting tooth and nail for my clients. But for the last 20 years, I thought I knew my wife thought we had built a life on trust and partnership. That call shattered every illusion. I sat back, trying to steady my breath, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Why? Why would Sarah sell the farm without even telling me? The farm wasn't just any property. It was a sprawling 400-acre stretch in rural Oklahoma. Purchased by my mother, Helen Harper, nearly 40 years ago. It was our sanctuary where I spent summers as a boy, where we held family reunions, and where my son Jake took his first steps among the wildflowers. My mother had fought through hardship to keep it alive. After my father died in a mining accident, she poured her heart, sweat, and savings into the land. She called it our piece of heaven. 8 months ago, Helen passed away quietly in her sleep, leaving me the farm with a sealed envelope marked simply, "Open when you feel lost." I hadn't opened it yet. I was too wrapped up in grief and the daily grind to face whatever message she'd left for me now. That envelope sat heavy in my desk drawer, a reminder of the past I'd ignored. I closed the contract, excused myself from the meeting, and retreated to the privacy of my office. The city buzzed beyond the glass walls, but inside, time felt suspended. I pulled the envelope from the drawer and ran my fingers over the familiar handwriting, "For when you need strength." Taking a deep breath, I broke the seal. Inside, I found a stack of papers, property deeds, stock certificates, bank statements, and a letter, penned in my mother's careful script. "My dear Ethan," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means life has thrown a storm your way. The farm was never just land, it was a piece of a larger puzzle. You see, your father's insurance money wasn't just spent on cattle and fences. I invested wisely, building a small empire while keeping it a secret. You have more resources. Then you realize, more than Sarah knows?" My eyes darted over the pages, heart racing. There were holdings in several companies, rental properties across Texas, and a trust fund with millions I never knew existed. Sarah's voice replayed in my head. Cold and final. "We're leaving tomorrow." The realization hit me like a punch. She sold the farm, not out of necessity, but to escape the life she thought I had. To run from a man she thought was simple and predictable. I reached for my phone and dialed my longtime accountant, David Mills. "David, I need you to look over some documents. It's urgent. Ethan, is everything okay? My wife sold the farm behind my back. I need to know exactly what we have before it's too late. Send the papers over. I'll dig in right away." As I waited, memories flooded me. Sudden interest in our finances these past few months, the secretive calls, the weekend getaways she never wanted to explain. And Brad, the man who showed up 3 months ago, charming, persistent, Sarah's friend. I pulled up photos from a recent dinner Brad attended with us. He smiled too easily, asked too many questions about the farm and my mother's will. I felt the sting of betrayal deepen. Sarah wasn't just selling a farm, she was selling out our entire family legacy. My phone buzzed a message from Sarah. "Ethan, you don't understand. This life, this farm, it's suffocating," Brad showed me. "There's more to life than running on a treadmill of mediocrity. Don't look for me. This is over." Her words were a dagger. But I refused to let her have the last move. I called Janet Rhodes, a private investigator and trusted friend. Janet, I need eyes on Sarah and Brad. Where are they? What are they doing? I need everything. Consider it done. That night, I sat alone in my study, holding my mother's letter, feeling the weight of her faith in me. Sarah thought she had one. She thought she could run, but she didn't know I was just getting started. If she wanted to burn bridges, I'd build a fire she'd never forget. The next morning, the sun rose over Houston like it always did, indifferent to the turmoil in my heart, but I wasn't the same man who had answered the phone last night. I was a man on a mission. Janet Rhodes was already at work. By noon, her first report hit my inbox. Sarah and Brad had checked into a suite at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, spending lavishly on champagne, gambling, and expensive dinners. Brad, it seemed, was no casual friend. He had a history, and a dark one at that. I scoured every detail Janet sent. Brad Morrison, or rather, Bradley James Kowalski, was a known con artist with a trail of broken marriages and ruined finances. He wasn't just some charming stranger, he was a predator. As the reality sank in, I realized this was no longer just about a farm or a betrayal. It was about protecting my family from destruction. I picked up the phone and called Amanda Lee, the best divorce lawyer in Dallas. Ruthless, precise, and the only person I trusted to navigate this mess without losing grip. Amanda, I need your discretion. And your expertise. This is bigger than I thought. Her voice was steady, professional. Tell me everything. I laid out the situation, the farm, the hidden inheritance, Brad's criminal background, Sarah's disappearance. First, draft papers for divorce, alleging abandonment and fraud, I instructed. But don't file, we need leverage. Amanda agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, Janet's updates painted a grim picture. Brad was sinking fast, losing thousands at the casino, spending recklessly, and getting tangled with local loan sharks. Sarah, too, was spiraling. Her credit cards were maxed out, she was desperate. Janet warned me that Brad was even trying to use Sarah as collateral for a loan. My blood ran cold. Despite everything, part of me couldn't abandon her, the woman I had loved for 20 years. The mother of my son. I arranged for round-the-clock protection for Sarah, hiring the best security Vegas could offer. Janet handled the details. No questions asked. I began digging into Brad's past through corporate records and legal filings. Within hours, I uncovered fraud charges, multiple bankruptcies, and complaints from other women. I reached out to their lawyers, forming an alliance to bring Brad down once and for all. But amidst this calculated revenge, a new plan was forming, not just to recover what was lost, but to save Sarah from herself. The fight was far from over. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Las Vegas. I didn't tell Janet. I didn't tell Amanda. I needed to see for myself, to look Sarah in the eye and decide whether there was anything left worth saving. The Bellagio was as loud and gaudy as I remembered. A palace of illusions where desperation wore diamonds and lies were served on silver trays. I spotted them in the high-limit lounge, Sarah in a glittering gold dress I'd never seen before, leaning close to Brad as he whispered something in her ear. She laughed, but it wasn't the laugh I knew. This one was sharp, brittle, almost desperate. Brad looked exactly as I'd imagined, smug, tanned, with that kind of fake confidence that only comes from having gotten away with too much for too long. His shirt was unbuttoned, a little too far, his watch too flashy to be real. Everything about him screamed fraud. I stayed back, watching, and then I saw it, the way he held her arm just a fraction too tight. The way her smile faltered when he turned away. This wasn't romance, this was control. I followed them to a private baccarat table. Brad played recklessly, tossing chips like confetti, losing tens of thousands in minutes. Sarah just sat there, sipping champagne, eyes vacant. She wasn't part of the game, she was the collateral. When Brad excused himself, I made my move. I slid into the seat next to her. "Hi, Sarah," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. and for a moment, I saw the woman I had once known. Then she looked away, her voice icy. "What are you doing here, Michael? I'm here to bring you home." She laughed, sharp, bitter. "Home? There is no home. You made sure of that when you kept your little inheritance a secret from me." I took a breath, steadying myself. "That farm was all I had left from my mother. I didn't hide it from you, I just didn't think it mattered until it was gone." She met my gaze then, and something flickered, regret, maybe, or fear. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Brad promised he could make it all work. He said we could triple the money, but now he owes people. Dangerous people. If I leave him, they'll come after me." That was all I needed to hear. I leaned closer. "Sarah, they're going to come after you whether you stay or not. The difference is, if you leave now, I can protect you." Her hand trembled, but before she could answer, Brad returned. His smile vanished when he saw me. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery, "if it isn't the farmer himself." I stood, meeting his stare. "Walk away, Brad. You have no idea the kind of storm you're about to bring on yourself." He smirked. "You think you scare me?" I smiled. Cold, deliberate. "I don't have to, your creditors will." That was when two large men in dark suits appeared near the entrance, scanning the room. Brad's eyes flickered toward them. Just for a second, but I saw the fear, and that was the moment. I knew the balance had shifted. The two men in dark suits weren't just ordinary security guards, they were federal agents. I had arranged for their presence after a tip from Detective Rodriguez, who had been working non-stop on this case. Brad's reckless gambling and mounting debts had finally caught up to him, and this time, there would be no escape. Brad's smirk faltered as the agents approached. "This isn't over," he hissed. But the confident tone had left his voice. Sarah looked at me, eyes wide with a mix of relief and panic. "Michael, what's happening?" "Justice," I said quietly. "For all of us." The agents moved in, calmly but firmly. Brad was handcuffed before he could resist. The surrounding crowd barely noticed, too engrossed in their own distractions to realize that a drama was unfolding right in their midst. But for me and Sarah, this was a turning point. I walked Sarah to the lobby, where a waiting car was ready to take us to a safe house. The tension between us was thick, yet beneath it, I sensed a fragile thread of trust beginning to reignite itself. Inside the car, she finally spoke. "Why are you doing this? After everything, why don't you just walk away?" Because 20 years of marriage meant more than betrayal. Because beneath the anger and hurt, there was still a part of me that wanted her to survive this stronger, wiser, free. Because no matter what happened, you're still the mother of my son. And because someone has to make sure Brad doesn't hurt anyone else? At the safe house, Sarah was cautious but cooperative. I had arranged for the best security team Vegas had to offer, not just for her protection, but to ensure that Brad's criminal network wouldn't come after her or my family. While she settled in, I went back to work. My plan wasn't just about saving Sarah. It was about dismantling the entire web. Brad had spun around her, and everyone else he'd conned. Back at the hotel, I reviewed the evidence gathered by Janet and the other attorneys representing Brad's victims. Wire, fraud, identity theft, forged documents, blackmail. The list was long and damning, but the key to the case was Sarah's testimony, her courage to stand up against a man she'd trusted, a man who had exploited her. I reached out to her, encouraging her to speak openly, to understand that her voice could bring justice not only for herself, but for the other women caught in Brad's trap. Days passed, each filled with tense negotiations, legal maneuvers, and moments of fragile reconciliation between Sarah and me. She began to understand the true scope of what Brad had done, not just to us, but to countless others. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit safe house living room, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to feel alive again." "I know," I said softly. "And now you have a chance to start over honestly, and on your own terms." The road ahead would be long and complicated. The divorce papers were ready, and the trust fund, for Tyler, was secure. But more than legal battles, this was about healing, for Sarah, for me, and for our son. And somewhere deep inside, I felt a strange kind of hope, because even in the darkest moments, there was a chance for redemption. The courthouse loomed over me like a monolith of judgment, both legal and personal. Every step I took toward that building echoed with the weight of 20 years of history, love, betrayal, regret. Today wasn't just about divorce papers or financial settlements. It was about truth, accountability, and finally, reclaiming control over a life that had spiraled wildly out of control. Sarah arrived early, looking small and fragile beneath the heavy shadow of the courthouse facade. But as our eyes met across the hall, I saw something new in her, a flicker of determination. Not the reckless woman who ran away to Vegas, but someone beginning to understand the cost of her choices. The courtroom was packed, as expected. Brad's defense attorney tried to paint Sarah as a willing accomplice, as someone who knowingly entered the scheme. But we had the emails, the forged documents, the messages showing coercion and blackmail. The truth was too clear to deny. I watched as Sarah took the stand, her voice shaky but steady. She spoke of Brad's manipulation, the lies, the fear she'd lived with. For the first time, she owned her mistakes without excuses. The judge listened carefully, occasionally glancing at me with a hint of sympathy. Outside the courtroom, Tyler waited. He had grown into a young man with quiet strength, a living reminder that even shattered families could find their way back to connection. When I saw him, I nodded slightly, a silent message of hope for the future. Days stretched into weeks as the case unfolded. Meanwhile, the foundation we established in Dorothy Thompson's name was gaining traction. More women came forward, sharing stories eerily similar to Sarah's. Our mission became bigger than one marriage or one con artist. It was about justice, education, and empowerment. Sarah and I met several times during this period. Each encounter was an exercise in forgiveness, setting boundaries, and rebuilding respect, if not trust. The walls we'd built over years of silence and hurt began to crumble, brick by painful brick. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling deposition, Sarah turned to me quietly. "Do you think there's any chance for us, not as husband and wife, but ... as something that can work?" I considered her words carefully. "I don't know about us," I admitted, "but I do believe in second chances, for you, for me, for Tyler. Maybe that's enough." The courtroom victory was bittersweet. Brad was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, a conviction that sent a clear message to predators everywhere. Sarah was cleared of all criminal charges but faced the consequences of her actions with grace. As the legal dust settled, the real work began. Healing, Sarah moved closer to Tyler in Austin, building a new life rooted in honesty and hard work. Tyler's respect for both of us deepened, and he became the bridge reconnecting fractured pieces of our family. For me, the journey led to an unexpected place, a deeper understanding that wealth wasn't just about money or power. It was about resilience, integrity, and the courage to face even the darkest chapters with grace. Sometimes, the hardest battles don't end with victory or defeat, they end with peace. The weeks after the courtroom victory felt surreal. The tension that had wrapped around my chest for months began to loosen, but the work was far from over. The battle had shifted from fighting a con artist and untangling lies to rebuilding fractured lives, healing wounds that cut deeper than any legal paper could address. Sarah moved into a modest apartment in Austin, not far from Tyler's college campus. She found a job as a fashion consultant, a role far from the life she once dreamed of, but one she embraced with determination and humility. When Tyler told me she was different, more grounded, more aware, it was a relief. The woman, who had once burned bridges, was now cautiously building new ones. Tyler himself had changed too. Watching him grow into a thoughtful, resilient young man was a source of quiet pride. During his graduation ceremony, he gave a speech that resonated with every fiber of my being. "Strength isn't about never falling," he said. "It's about how you get back up." That sentence summed up the whole journey we had endured as a family. The Dorothy Thompson Foundation, born from my mother's inheritance and fueled by our experiences, became my new mission. We dedicated ourselves to helping women escape abusive marriages, particularly those manipulated by scammers and fraudsters. Our program offered free legal advice, temporary financial aid, and most crucially, education arming women with the knowledge to spot red flags before it was too late. Janet, ever the loyal investigator, continued to work with us, unearthing stories of deception and helping women find their footing after trauma. Marcus, my longtime partner at the law firm, admired the transformation I was undergoing. "You're a different man now," he told me one evening. "More patient. More ... whole." It wasn't just about vengeance or restitution anymore. It was about legacy, the chance to turn pain into purpose and loss into strength. I realized that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or assets, but in the power to rewrite endings that once seemed permanent. Months later, I ran into Sarah at a grocery store in Austin. She was shopping for simple ingredients, clearly budgeting, and planning with care. We exchanged polite greetings, sharing a moment of genuine warmth. Not the forced, superficial happiness of our past, but the quiet contentment of two people who had found peace with their choices. Tyler often asks about Sarah now. "Does she still ask about you?" he says. I tell him yes, she's learning, growing, and becoming someone we can both be proud of. And I remind him that families aren't defined by perfection, but by the grace we offer each other, in spite of our flaws. Brad remains in federal prison, serving time for his crimes. His fall was swift, and just a stark contrast to the empire my mother built quietly, far away from the noise and chaos. It's ironic, really. Sarah left me thinking I was just a small-town lawyer. Brad thought she was an easy mark. They both underestimated what happens when someone decides to fight back, not with anger or destruction, but with unwavering strength and wisdom. As I look out from my new office, the building I purchased with money Sarah never knew existed, smile at the irony. Life's greatest lessons often come from our darkest moments. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply becoming so strong that what others did to you no longer matters. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were necessary. Healing is rarely a straight path. It winds and twists, forcing you to confront the past even as you try to build a better future. For me, that journey was marked by quiet moments reflecting alone in the office, late-night phone calls with Tyler, and occasional visits with Sarah. Each conversation an exercise in patience and understanding. Tyler was becoming the man we had always hoped he'd be: compassionate, wise beyond his years, and fiercely loyal to family. Despite everything, he had chosen forgiveness over bitterness. One night, as we sat watching the city lights from my balcony, he said something that stuck with me. "Dad, I don't want to be defined by what happened. I want to define what happens." Next, his words reminded me why the Dorothy Thompson Foundation mattered so much. This wasn't just about my story or Sarah's. It was about the thousands of women trapped in silent struggles, waiting for someone to light a path forward. Foundation grew steadily. We partnered with local organizations, hosted seminars on financial literacy, and developed an outreach program that traveled to small towns and rural communities, places where help was often out of reach. Each story we encountered was a stark reminder of how cunning and devastating marriage fraud could be. Janet's investigations uncovered a network of fraudsters operating under various aliases. Together with federal authorities, we helped dismantle their operations, bringing justice to women who had lost everything. The gratitude in their eyes fueled my resolve. This work was bigger than revenge or money. It was about restoring dignity and hope. Sarah occasionally reached out, mostly through Tyler, asking questions about rebuilding credit or finding stable housing. I never responded directly, but I ensured she had access to resources through the foundation. The past was a delicate thread, but the future, our children's future, was a tapestry we still had the power to weave. Marcus took a more active role in the foundation, overseeing legal clinics and mentoring young lawyers who wanted to specialize in family and fraud law. His presence reminded me that even in loss, there was strength to be found in partnership and shared purpose. One afternoon, I received a letter from a woman named Emilia, single mother who had escaped an abusive marriage thanks to our foundation's help. Her words were raw and heartfelt. She wrote about fear, resilience, and the moment she realized she deserved better. Letters like hers were the true reward, proof that amidst heartbreak, change was possible. Looking back, I understood that every step from the shock of betrayal to the long road of forgiveness had shaped me. I was no longer just a lawyer or a betrayed husband. I was a man dedicated to protecting others from the pain I once endured. The foundation wasn't just a legacy, was a promise that no one would have to face deceit alone, that every woman betrayed by trust could find strength in community, and that even the deepest wounds could heal. As the sun set over Dallas, casting warm hues across the city skyline, I felt a profound peace. The battles we fought, the lessons learned, and the lives touched had transformed pain into purpose. And in that transformation, I found true wealth, an unshakable sense of who I was and the impact I could make. Tyler's growth was one of the most rewarding outcomes of everything we had been through. Despite the chaos of the past years, he had matured into a young man with a clear vision and unwavering resolve. His graduation was more than a ceremony, it was a testament to resilience and the power of second chances. After college, Tyler decided to pursue a career in social work. Driven by a desire to help families broken by circumstances similar to ours, he spent months volunteering with local shelters and counseling centers, learning firsthand the complexities of trauma and recovery. Watching him find his calling made me realize that our family's pain had sown seeds of hope not just for us, but for countless others. The Dorothy Thompson Foundation began to receive requests for help from beyond Texas. Stories of women trapped in fraudulent marriages came from all over the country, each case unique yet hauntingly familiar. We expanded our services, hiring counselors, financial advisors, and legal experts to provide a comprehensive support system. One particularly moving case involved a woman named Rachel, who had lost her life savings to a man posing as a successful entrepreneur. Through the foundation, she received legal aid, counseling, and a small grant to restart her business. When she called me months later, her voice trembling with gratitude, I understood the true impact of our work. We weren't just fighting fraud, we were restoring lives. Amidst this, I maintained a cautious but civil relationship with Sarah. Our interactions were few and far between, always mediated through Tyler or the foundation. There was no romance left, but a mutual respect had grown, a recognition that our shared past, however painful, had shaped us both. Marcus continued to be a steady presence, managing the foundation's operations and offering strategic guidance. His partnership was a reminder that even after loss, new bonds could form stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. One evening, as I reviewed the foundation's latest impact report, my phone buzzed with a message from Janet. She had uncovered another ring of fraudsters exploiting vulnerable women across multiple states. The investigation would be long and complex, but the prospect of dismantling another dangerous network energized us all. The foundation hosted its first annual gala to raise awareness and funds. The event brought together survivors, advocates, donors, and volunteers, a vibrant community united by purpose. Tyler gave a heartfelt speech about forgiveness, growth, and the importance of standing together. His words resonated deeply, a bridge between past pain and future promise. In quiet moments, I reflected on the irony of it all. Sarah had left, chasing a life she thought she deserved. Brad had deceived her and others, only to be caught in his own web. And I had found strength, not in anger, but in action. The journey was far from over. There were still battles to fight, stories to hear, and lives to change. But with every step, the Dorothy Thompson Foundation became more than a tribute to my mother's legacy. It became a beacon of hope. As the foundation grew, so did my understanding of wealth, not as dollars in a bank, but as the capacity to make a difference. True riches were found in empathy, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what's right. And so, with Tyler by my side and a community behind us, we moved forward. Not as victims of betrayal, but as architects of new beginnings. Months after the gala, things took an unexpected turn that tested everything we had built. One evening, as I was closing up the foundation's office, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Tyler. His voice was tense, almost panicked. "Dad, you need to come to Austin now." I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my coat and headed out immediately. When I arrived, Tyler met me outside the modest apartment where Sarah had been living. His face was grave. "There's been a break-in," he said. "Someone ransacked the place. Sarah's safe, but everything's a mess." Inside, the damage was worse than I imagined. Drawers were pulled out, papers scattered, and the air thick with fear. Sarah was sitting on the couch, visibly shaken but unharmed. "Mark," she whispered, "I don't know who did this, but I'm scared." The police were already on site, but it was clear this was no random burglary. Tyler and I immediately suspected it was connected to the foundation's work, maybe a warning from one of the fraud rings. We were investigating. That night, I slept at Sarah's apartment, determined to protect the fragile peace we had fought so hard to create. The next morning, Janet arrived with her usual intensity, already digging into the incident. She uncovered security footage showing a shadowy figure lurking near Sarah's building days before the break-in. "This is getting dangerous," she said. "We need to tighten security for everyone involved." As the days passed, more threats surfaced: anonymous calls, strange emails, and subtle intimidation tactics aimed at the foundation and its clients. The criminals we were confronting were desperate and ruthless. Tyler took on a leadership role, organizing volunteer patrols and coordinating with local law enforcement. His resolve was inspiring, but the weight of responsibility was heavy. One evening, during a foundation meeting, a young woman named Emily shared her story. She had been caught in a scam that left her homeless and hopeless until the foundation stepped in. Her courage and gratitude reminded us why we fought so hard. But the threats escalated. A fire broke out at a warehouse storing donated goods for survivors. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the message was clear. We were disrupting dangerous operations. I called Detective Rodriguez, who promised increased federal support. The stakes were higher than ever. Amid the chaos, Sarah began attending counseling sessions at the foundation, facing her trauma and rebuilding herself. Her transformation was slow but steady, a testament to human resilience. One night, Tyler and I sat on the porch, talking about the future. "Dad, this fight isn't just about us anymore," he said. "It's about protecting everyone who can't protect themselves." I nodded. "And we won't back down." The foundation launched a public awareness campaign, using social media and community events to educate people about the signs of fraud and abuse. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from survivors, thanking us for giving them hope and strength. It was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, light can shine through. As the threats continued, we fortified our defenses and built alliances with other advocacy groups. We became a united front against deception and betrayal. Through it all, Tyler emerged as a true leader, embodying the values of empathy, courage, and unwavering determination. The journey was far from easy, but every challenge reinforced our commitment. We were no longer just a family healing from betrayal. We were a movement of force for justice, healing, and new beginnings. The final battle wasn't just legal or physical. It was a fight for the very soul of everything we believed in. Months of investigations, threats, and setbacks culminated in a landmark federal trial against the criminal networks behind the scams that had devastated so many lives. Brad Kowalski's case was just the beginning. Now, with the foundation's evidence and testimonies, the government was ready to strike hard. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. Survivors, advocates, reporters, and families filled every seat. Tyler stood beside me, calm and composed, a symbol of strength born from hardship. When I took the stand to testify, I felt the weight of every decision I'd made, from confronting Sarah's betrayal to building a foundation out of pain. I told the truth, laying bare the manipulation, the fraud, and the courage it took to fight back. Sarah also testified, her voice steady as she recounted the nightmare of deception and the path to reclaiming her life. Watching her speak, I realized how far she had come from a woman trapped in lies to one embracing honesty and healing. The prosecution laid out an unassailable case, piece by piece dismantling the criminal empires built on greed and betrayal. The defense tried every trick to discredit witnesses and sow doubt, but the Foundation's network of survivors and advocates proved impossible to silence. Outside the courtroom, the Foundation continued its work, supporting victims and raising awareness. Finally, after weeks of trial, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Justice had been served. Brad and several accomplices were sentenced to long prison terms. The restitution funds recovered through the trial began flowing back to the victims, giving many a fresh start. In the aftermath, the Foundation expanded nationwide, becoming a beacon of hope and empowerment for countless survivors. Tyler graduated college with honors and delivered a moving speech about resilience, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. Sarah found peace in her new life, dedicating herself to advocacy and rebuilding relationships with her family and me. I discovered a deeper meaning to wealth, not measured by money or possessions, but by the strength to rise above betrayal, to protect what truly matters, and to help others do the same. One evening, sitting in the office of the Dorothy Thompson Foundation, I looked at a photo of my mother. Her legacy had become so much more than a financial empire. It was a legacy of courage, justice, and hope. Sometimes, life shatters you to pieces, but in those broken pieces, you find the chance to build something stronger, something lasting. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.